The first part of what we talked about in the ROE is reaching out. And now the question is, once we've reached out to our parishioners, how do we engage them more and more fully in the ministry of the church? And so here I want to present to you kind of what I call a new POP, the new parish operational paradigm, to maximize engagement. I'll be very clear what I'm talking about. I am not talking about changing anything liturgically. I'm not talking about changing anything sacramentally. I'm dealing on the operational side of the house, the way we operate the rest of it. So the no sacrilege is yet committed. So in order to do this, though, we have to have a quick history lesson. So this is Orthodoxy in America in 4 slides. So how about that for audacious? So around the early 1900s, and again, it will vary a little bit by community, a little bit by jurisdiction, but generally speaking, around the early 1900s, the Orthodoxy enters America, so we have the early faithful, and they recruit, usually from abroad, an itinerant preacher to come around on some cycle, right? And that's in the early 1900s. Then again, it varies by city, jurisdiction by jurisdiction, but essentially, sometime in the 1920s and 1940s, we started to see full-time priests that are servicing a parish, working with the early precursors to boards of directors, parish councils, okay? Then around the 1950s, and again it varies a little bit, but around the 1950s, we see the creation of professionally trained priests from great theological seminaries that are working now with elected parish councils and boards, that are reporting to now a parish assembly that ultimately is responsible to the rabble, all the parishioners. And that's the operational model in which the Orthodox Church found itself evolving to around the 1950s. And that's the exact same operational model we are using to this day. Which leads me to an important question. Can you think of any other organization that's effective that is using the same operational model that it used 65 years ago? The answer is probably not. Now think about the demography of your respective parish. How many people live within walking distance of the parish? How many kids only do things at the church? I mean, now there's a plethora of activities. And so the world around us has changed, but our operational model has remained the same. And that's part of the tension that we're experiencing from the operational side. So I respectfully submit that it's time for a change. So let me fast forward and give you a new model that we've seen evolve in very effectively in Orthodox churches. And it's what we call a ministry-based organization. And in a ministry-based organization, the way it works is you have the clergy and the parish leadership, whether it's a board, however you define it, in different jurisdictions call it something different, in the center. And then every one of the dots in the circle around there represents a ministry, right? And the leader of that ministry, whoever she or he may be, together with the clergy and the parish council form what's known as a council of ministries. So think of the council of ministries as the leader of all of your ministries, together with your elected parish council leaders and priest leaders. And the parishioners attach themselves, again, operationally. I'm not speaking sacramentally, I'm not speaking liturgically. They better attach themselves that way. But on the operational side of the church, they attach themselves to the various ministries. And by the way, that may change over time. For 15 years, I coached Goya and Youth League basketball in the Atlanta City Church League that our church operated in. So if that was the basketball ministry, I was attached there. At the same time, my wife was involved in the Goya ministry, so she was attached there. Now she's involved in different ministries. I'm involved in different ministries. Sometimes as your life progresses, you will move into different ministries. Some of us get stuck in ruts and stay in the same ones, and that's okay too. So the point here is that the operational model in the old days in the 50s relied on an elected parish council running everything. Well, that doesn't work anymore. And in fact, in most parish councils, and look, I served on a parish council. For those of you that are watching or visiting that are on parish council, I mean no disrespect about, I'm really getting ready to say. The vast majority of people in parish council are essentially bumps on the log in the parish council context, right? The president has a job, the treasurer has a job, the secretary has a job, the rest of you, whether you're there or not, doesn't really matter. But at the end of the day, the problem is, where is the ministry, where are the work being done in the parishes? It's being done at the ministry levels. And because there's no necessary connection between the ministry work and the parish council work, we have a little bit of a fragmentation. So the Council of Ministries provides us a tool, a resource, to actually better manage what we're doing. Now there's a couple of other nuances of this, right? So let's get into a little bit about what a Council of Ministries and a ministry-based organization can look like in your parish and how it will transform your parish. So simply stated, an MBO, for those of you who are business people, that's not management by objectives, a ministry-based organization is organized around its ministries. And the parish programs are ultimately delivered by individual ministries. Again, I'm not speaking sacramentally or liturgically. And they're managed and coordinated by the Council of Ministries. So let's look at what the Council of Ministry does. Again, it's a group of all the leaders of the ministries together with the priest and the parish council. So it includes the priest and the parish council, but here's the nuance. Every parish council member that is not an officer, meaning not your president, not your treasurer, not your secretary, is a liaison to one or more ministries. So if you have 30 ministries and 10 extra parish council members, each one of them is a liaison to 3 different ministries. Now what does a liaison mean? It doesn't mean they actually have to do all the work in the ministry, although it's great if they want to. It does mean, however, they have to connect with the leader of that ministry to find out what's going on. What are we doing? What's going on with your ministry? What challenges? What things have we done? Now let's look at how we transform our parish council meeting. In our normal parish council meeting, we spend hours and hours of time on the irrelevant and the crisis du jour, right? It's the tyranny of the urgent, right? So now we're going to transform the effectiveness of our parish council meetings. Because now what's going to happen is every member of the parish council has a speaking role. They're there to report on, maybe not every nuance of every detail of every ministry, otherwise you'd be there for a week, but certainly some of the highlights of what's going on. And in so doing, they're now connecting the entire parish leadership, including the priest who can't be at every ministry meeting, with what's going on in the ministry, and they're spotting things that develop. And that's really what a council ministry does, right? So a council ministry actually gathers together all of the ministry leaders and ensures that they are aligned with the overall vision and mission of the church and mission of the parish, so that there's an alignment exercise, and they should meet at least quarterly for the purpose of sharing best practices, talking about what's going on, seeing what resource needs are developed. And here's what's really interesting. When you get a council ministry working, part of what you'll see is this ministry needs that resource, that ministry needs the same resource, and this ministry needs that resource. The problem is when they were all isolated pillars, you didn't know you had one resource need. Now when you gather them all together, you share that information, you can identify resource needs that can better leverage the results. In addition, you start to see where people are shooting at a lot of the same targets. Oh, I didn't realize y'all were working on this, we're working on this, well, maybe we can work together on something. So you're creating a more coordinated strategy regarding connecting people with the ministries. Because remember, what did we say in part 1, the reach out phase? When we meet with every parishioner, what are we asking them for? To engage in a ministry of the parish. So we need to have the infrastructure of ministries established, managed, operated effectively, so that they can actually feel engaged and get engaged and actually make a big difference. So if you break it down, we talked about the council of ministries, now let's break it down to the ministry level. Each one of those dots in the circle. At the ministry level, each ministry by consensus must do a few things. It should establish its own SMART goals. Now for those of you that haven't gone through our strategic planning program, I refer you to that, but it's basically making sure that the goals are specific, are measurable, are attainable, are realistically written and realistic for the group, and have a timetable attached to it. So you're going to establish at the ministry level, what are our goals? They have to be consistent with the church's overall goals, mission, vision, and strategies. You will identify your budgetary and resource needs as well as your sources. In other words, it's not like, well, here's our budget need, you go fund it for me. Here's what we need, let's reach together, let's see how we can share it, let's see how we can do it, but you've got to develop a resource plan. Thirdly, you recruit parishioners to serve and be served. Now listen to both parts of that equation. In the first part, when we were reaching out to all the parishioners, we were trying to engage them in at least one ministry of the church. We want those who are willing to serve. But we should also be looking at this as an opportunity to realize those who could be served in the respective communities. And so this is an opportunity to really look at our ministry as Christ commanded us to in making disciples in a broader sense than just, here's the group of people we always serve. And then fourthly, that ministry at that level diligently pursues its plans and continuously evaluates its performance. Now because you have SMART goals, you actually have a metric by which you can assess the performance of your ministry leaders. They've established their goals. If at the end of the first quarter they've achieved none of the goals, you have to have a conversation with the leadership. If at the end of the second quarter they've achieved none of the goals, you have a different conversation with the leadership. At the end of the third quarter where they haven't achieved any of those goals, you have to replace the leadership if you haven't already replaced them. Now it's hard to replace leadership. I mean, everyone gets uncomfortable about firing volunteers. But sometimes that's the most effective thing you can do to have a ministry unleash its potential. You don't tell them we want you to leave the church. You say, look, obviously there's stuff going on in your life. I get it. We've all been there. We've all had chapters in our lives where we can't devote what we want to devote. So let's ask you to step aside and let's have your succession leaders come in. And we're going to talk about succession in just a second because that's a critical component. So if you look at it from graphic, for those of you that are visual kinesthetic learners, this is what the map looks like, right? So the ministry sets some goals, it identifies needs, it recruits people, again, people to serve and people to be served. It actually delivers those services, you monitor and evaluate, and then you start the cycle all over again. Because as you have achieved a particular goal, whatever goal you may have achieved, maybe it's time to reset and determine some new goals. As the church develops a different vision and mission, or at least some improvements or changes in its vision and mission, you will challenge some of your ministries to do something differently in that regard. Now, just so you know, we're not coming in with a great theory and leaving you on your own. If you go to the Atlanta Metropolis Strategic Planning Portal, that's atlstrategicplan.org, and there's the exact URL, you will see a completely well-established program for creating the Council of Ministries in your parish. And it includes a couple of different models, because there's not a one-size-fits-all. There's different ways people have implemented Council of Ministries in their parish. So we include a couple of options in there for you to consider. But I will suggest to you that if you will fundamentally reassess the operational effectiveness of your organization and seek to move it more towards a Council of Ministries, you'll take the 1950s model and actually bring it to closer to something that can actually work in today's society. This is what the URL page looks like. So if you go to atlstrategicplan.org, and if you go to completed materials, this third one down there is the Council of Ministries, and you can click there and you can actually download all the materials. Now, in the context of this, what I'd like to ask parishes to think about are, what are the ministries of your parish? Are they enough? And are they structured to get everyone involved? And usually what's interesting is, and by the way, I challenge you to do this in your own parish, go look at your website and see what ministries you have listed on your website. Because that's the easiest access point that people have to go look at it, right? And it's always astounding to me every time I go, oh, we have 30 ministries. I said, no, you don't, you have 7. No, we have 30 ministries. I said, look, let me show you, you only have 7. Oh, we haven't updated it. Okay, what does that tell me about your ministries and your effectiveness and stuff like that, right? So here's what you typically see as in a typical ministry list in most parishes. Most every parish will have some of these things. Something with you, something for philanthropy, and 3 parishes is full of course, and others it's different organizations. Education, stewardship, budget, finance, building, festivals, welcoming. That's kind of the list, right? So here is one parish's version of that, where they've identified 60 different ministries that you can get involved in. If you go to the page that I gave you before for the handbooks, the ministry handbooks that I have on my website that are available to you, I can give you one that has 90. I can give you one that has over 120 different ministries on it. Now, for smaller parishes, that would be impossible. But for many parishes, it would be amazingly easy to get more ministries engaged in the process. And what I've discovered is when you talk to people about this exercise, inspiration occurs because the Holy Spirit is constantly working, even when we sometimes don't recognize it, and new ministries get developed. I was on the West Coast doing a program, and we got through a little council ministries, and at the break, 2 women came up to me and said, we're inspired now to start a new ministry. And, arrogant that I am, I said, well, I've heard them all, so tell me what your ministry is, and I'll tell you how to get it successfully off the ground. And they shared with me something I'd never heard before. Here's what it was. I thought it was just great. There are many holy places of orthodoxy globally, some in the United States, some abroad. And we don't know enough about all these holy places of orthodoxy. So this ministry was going to pick a place, a holy place of orthodoxy, that they were going to focus on. And once a month, they were going to gather at different people's houses and have a potluck dinner. And each person was assigned to do some research to share some information about this holy place of orthodoxy. And what it would lead to is a pilgrimage for whoever could afford to go to that pilgrimage to that holy place of orthodoxy. And it didn't matter if you couldn't, it was okay. When the pilgrims came back, the last program in that session, they would share the pictures and the stories from that holy place of orthodoxy, and then they'd pick another one and start all over again. And maybe it was 6 months, maybe it was 9 months, maybe it was a year. And if you were interested in this holy place of orthodoxy, but not the next one, well, you'd step out of the next one and wait for that. What a wonderfully brilliant idea, that exercise. And so it was just a great example of an opportunity to think about how you can share the various gifts and blessings that you have. But this is 60 examples. I promised you an example of what a stewardship solicitation card can look like. This is one from one of the parishes here in the metro area. So if you look at it, there's the usual demographic information at the top over here. Let me put a point of personal privilege here. One thing that ticks me off, and I mean it really gets my goat, is how much we disrespect our stewards and we disrespect their time. Let me tell you what I mean by that. I've discovered in decades of working with Orthodox churches that the vast majority of us do not change our names every year. My name has stayed the same my entire life. I've discovered that when my kids were 13 and 15 one year, the next year they were 14 and 16. If you make your stewards fill out the exact same demographic information that you already have, you are showing them, A, I don't know you, and B, I don't care about your time. You do that work for them. Trust me, if they got married or divorced or whatever reason decided to change their name, they'll strike it through and do it. If they move, they'll figure it out. Show respect for your donors and a personal privilege. But if you look at this card, there's only one place on the entire card that talks about money. And by the way, there's a side too that we're going to get to in a second. It's down here at the bottom, and here's what it says. It says, I/we commit to Christ and His church through this pledge. I/we expect to give the following amount weekly. There's one choice. There's not 16 choices. There's one choice. And there's the scripture passage that we talked about at the beginning of the program. That's what we're here to do. We're here to live the scripture calling of every week we bring our first fruits to the church, okay? And this is matched with electronic giving so that we make it really easy. What's your weekly amount? We'll just hit the credit card. Don't worry about it. If you need to change, you can change anytime you want to. This is not a gimmicky kind of thing. And look at the way it's worded. We give to Christ and His church. We're not giving it to Father George, because I could get ticked off at Father George, right? I could get ticked off at Maria. But I'm really going to have a hard time if I have to confess that I got ticked off at Christ and His church. Because that's what we're giving to. That's what we're giving to. Now, that's just the first side of the page. Here's the second side of the page. In this parish, here are the 61 different ministries. And there's a blank line next to it. And if it's a married couple, you put H for the husband and a W for the wife. You have a separate one for the kids, so don't think for a second that we're going to let the kids on it. They fill their own stewardship card, by the way, including their own financial contribution. That's how we're going to build this culture of stewardship within them, right? So, and then look at this. At the bottom, there's a whole line that says other talents. This is where those two women wrote in the holy places of orthodoxy ministry that we never even thought of doing and stuff like that. Now, when you use this kind of a form, and you can do it in any different format. I've seen it in trifold formats. But remember, the vast majority of your stewardship just have a money number on it. You're missing the boat. You're missing the game. That ain't what it's all about. This is what it's all about. You get them engaged in ministries, I promise you the money will take care of itself. So, if you get a stewardship card back, and there is a monetary contribution, but no ministry signed up, you send it back. Actually, you deliver it back to them. It's incomplete. This is what we were looking for. Thank you very much for your contribution. We are also looking for that. But unless you are engaged in the ministries of the church in some form or some fashion, we're not counting you as a steward yet. Right? If you get one where there's a ministry filled out and no monetary amount, leaving aside whatever your bylaws may require, I'd say, okay. Because at the end of the day, you get them engaged in the ministry of the church, I promise you, on the watch, you will own the wallet. So, at the end of this module, when we step back and look at it, what we're suggesting you do is that you establish a council of ministries model, and you engage the faithful in at least one ministry. And again, we provided you not only this content, but the very detailed step-by-step process on how to establish a council of ministry, as well as what you saw in the first part of this program, the reach-out phase. Here's how we actually reach out to every one of our parishioners. So now we finished 6 of the 15 steps. So get ready to gear up because we're moving quickly through the rest. Number 7, a total welcoming experience. Now notice the phrase here. It's a total welcoming experience. It's not a welcoming committee. That's what we think of when we think of welcoming. That's only the beginning. It's a total welcoming experience. So let me give you some data behind this. So this is a study that was done by the Pew Research Forum of the top 5 things people look for in picking a new church. The top 5 things. The first thing they look for, 83% of the people chose based on the quality of the sermon. We're not here to talk about that. That's a whole separate conversation I have when I do clergy retreats. But look at what's number 2 on the list. Being welcomed by leaders within the community. Now let's talk about what does it mean to be welcomed. So here's the question that I like to ask people. What do you expect of a parish that's fully meeting its mission? What do you expect of a parish that's fully meeting a mission? So here are the top answers that I repeatedly get, and I'll give you the correct answer at the bottom, although it includes the top answers. Welcoming and loving parish experience. If it's fully meeting its mission, it's a welcoming experience, it's a loving experience. Number 2, excellent attendance and participation in the sacraments. If you can see tumbleweeds rolling down the church and nobody there to pick them up, it's probably not fully meeting its mission. Thirdly, active, enthusiastic participation in activities, functions, and an extensive array of ministries. So regardless of what your spiritual needs and gifts are, there's some place where you can execute on it. Fourth, enthusiastic volunteering of time and talent. Not the drudgery, okay, I'll do it. Not the force, if you don't do it, I'm going to, again, whatever. They're enthusiastically running into volunteer. Generous donations. Notice I didn't say just of money. Notice I didn't say not accounting money. It's generous donations of whatever they have. One of the best examples, I was working with a parish, I won't name where and I won't name the parish, and the parish council president came up to me to complain because one of their stewards wanted to give the church a dumpster. And I said, okay. He said, can you believe they wanted to give a dumpster? I said, yeah. He said, but it's a dumpster. I said, yeah, I mean, I'm sensing there's a problem here that I don't understand. It's a dumpster. I said, okay, let me ask you a few questions. Does your church produce any garbage? The guy looked at me and said, well, of course we do. I said, what do you do with the garbage? Well, we collect it up and we throw it away. In what? In a dumpster. Okay, you need a dumpster. The guy had a dumpster. That's what gifts God had given him at that moment was a dumpster. It's something you can use. By the way, if you didn't need it, take the dumpster, sell it to somebody who does need a dumpster, and use that money. Why are we rejecting whatever gifts God has given us to give to other people? It's generous donations. That's the spirit of generosity that comes in anything. It's people willing to, as we did in coaching in basketball, dive in for loose balls. I'm always there. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to help you out. Okay. The next element is spiritual and numerical growth. Now this is a big uh-oh in most Orthodox parishes, because we're measuring neither of these. When I go around parishes and say, how many people do you on average have in a divine liturgy? I don't know. Don't you think that's a relevant measure? I mean, would you like to know how many people we're reaching in relationship to how many people we have? And how many people, are we going up or are we going down? Is it trending in the right direction? These are just simple things that we can gather. Now the question of spiritual growth is a much more tricky concept. How do we measure our spiritual growth? Well, coincidentally, in the Metropolis Atlanta Strategic Plan, we actually have a goal that's designed towards creating spiritual growth resources that are available to you that you can download for free forever off the portal. That's one tool. There are thousands of others. But until we actually say, how are we doing with our spiritual growth? Are we really fully meeting the mission of the parish? How are we not? Here's the last one. And this is, I think, perhaps the all-encompassing one. The parish that emulates the kingdom of God, a culture that's overflowing with joy, peace, and love. I mean, think about it for just a second. If every time you went into your church, you felt joy, you were at peace, you felt love, doesn't it stand to reason you come more often and then you get other people to come? So the question is, how do we achieve all of these? And one of the techniques is using a welcoming ministry. First of all, it's very orthodox, and it sets the tone for the entire experience. It's the third most important element that people look at when deciding to stay at a church, and it actually helps make people feel they made the right decision to worship in this place. It frankly makes people want to come back, and it makes people feel like family. When you're welcoming people, when you have this loving environment, it just feels different. How many times have you had maybe your kids bring a friend to unfortunately, it's usually a Greek festival or something like that, where they saw the camaraderie and they go, man, this feels good, right? It's that, I'm not suggesting you create that culture in your church, but I am saying the element of connecting a welcome experience does that. And again, if we look at Christ's great commandment, that we love one another, what better example can we have of loving one another than truly, truly, truly welcoming everybody? So let's talk about a little about what it looks like. Greeting newcomers in the narthex is merely the first and frankly the easiest step. It's technically what most churches do and say, now we're done with our welcoming ministry. It is table stakes. It's what it takes to begin the game. It's only the beginning of the process. You have to do that, and you have to do that well. And there's ways to do it well. And one of the ways you do it well is when you greet them, the first thing you do is find out something about them and then connect them to somebody in the parish who is like them. The churches that do the best welcoming experience, when a newcomer comes in, the first thing they'll do, there was a parish I went and visited where they actually, it was a southern parish, so they greeted me outside, and they said, "You're not from here?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Sign the book." Okay, so I signed the book. And then they put a little cross, sticking cross on my lapel. And when I walked in, that was a signal to the entire welcoming group, here's a newcomer. They came to me, and they welcomed me, and they gave me the bulletin, and they showed me where to do and what to do. They invited me to participate in the coffee hour afterwards. Now, they didn't get a perfect A score, and in a second I'll show you why, but they did a really good thing in that regard. And I can say there are parishes where I go in, and I've never been there before, and I'm anonymous as you are when you walk into strange parishes. I was sitting in one parish in the back. I was sitting with the unwashed in the back where I belong. And so a guy next to me says, "Hey, in this church, when they go to communion, do they queue in the main aisle or in the side aisle?" I said, "I don't know, ask the guy next to you." He asked the guy next to him. He said, "I don't know, I'm a visitor here too." So he had the Three Stooges in the back. We didn't know what we're doing over there. Nobody bothered to tell us. We didn't feel welcome there. We were, and in fact, at this point in this church, at 10:54, all hell broke loose in the church. I mean, people were jumping around and standing around and moving. And I kept looking at the guy like, I think we should be doing something, because we all wanted to take communion. We didn't know what to do. It just so happened in that church, and that happened to be the moment when they queued up all the kids, because they put the kids through for communion, and then they started the Sunday school. I didn't know that, because parents and teachers were moving and stuff like that. I thought, like, do I have to elbow my way and get this little late? Yeah. Do you understand how unwelcoming that experience is in the context? So when you do it right, what you do is the person that greets you finds out a little bit something about you. You know, just a real quick demographic. First of all, what's your name? That's important, but you're going to sign the book, right? Tell me something about yourself. I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a lawyer. I have 2 kids. Great. First thing they're thinking of, who do we have that has 2 daughters about this age that's a lawyer? That's the person I want to connect them up with. So we're starting to make a connection on a dimension that makes some sense, whatever the case may be. Then you have to have people available to sit with people. In other words, it's usually one poor guy who's just handing, or gal who's just handing out a book, "Thank you, welcome, go in," you know. But what happens when you have a newcomer? What happens when somebody's not Orthodox? One of the exercises I do with parishes that I take through strategic planning is I ask them to come to church on Sunday with a sheet of paper and pretend they've never been in an Orthodox church in their entire life, and to write down all the things they wouldn't understand. I mean, we come away with 6, 7 pages of stuff, right? So if you have somebody that's able to sit with a true newcomer to Orthodoxy, sit with them and explain, answer their questions, be there to do that. Because here's what we do. Welcome, go in the coffee hour. You don't know anybody, but go in the coffee hour and have fun. But if you connected them with someone who was like them, they would then take you around. Let me introduce you to Joe, and Joe's new to our community, and Maria and his family, whatever the case may be. Okay. Then you need to have somebody personally follow up with them, usually within a week. To get together with them, to make sure they get to know them better, and part of that is to make sure they're the best person to continue the relationship with them, because there may actually be somebody in the community that would be a better fit with them, and to ask them to become involved in something in the parish. And you personally bring them to at least one additional parish activity. It can be a service, that's great. It can be a social activity, that's fine. It can be a Bible study, that's fine. Bring them into the family. Make them feel welcome, constantly keep introducing them to different and more people in the community until they develop their own thing. Ultimately, you need to engage them in a ministry. The ultimate objective is to find a ministry in which they will be willing to engage. When I first moved to Atlanta to go to graduate school, I heard there was a Greek festival at this church. I drove to the Greek festival. I was met at the door by now a senior citizen who, God bless him, in a short number of months will be 90 years old. He was much younger then, because I was much younger then. And he said, "Who are you? What are you doing here? Let me introduce you." And he took me over, just sight unseen. I just came there to have a good time at Greek Festival. He took me over to the Yido booth. And he said, "Let me introduce you to a bunch of young men just like you, graduate school, whatever, blah, 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 blah." And they got to be some of my fast and favorite friends. And 30 many years later, I'm still making Yido sandwiches in the Yido booth, because he pulled me right in there. And these are great folks, and these are great people. And they're some of my best friends. Now that's a stupid, silly little example, but that's how easy this is, even with the stupid and silly little things. Imagine when we bring them closer on their faith.